do my thing.
So what are you going to say?
Hi guys, I'm Zotel from Creative Central. Today, Nozu is going to be talking about sustainability.
Cool. We can start. 1, 2, 3, go. Sure.
So, according to our vision, we want to create an environment or that a child will first of all have self-realization, will have independence, and the proper knowledge that will help them to sustain themselves. So when we're talking about an ecosystem that is sustainable, we involved the last 3 things that we talked about, which is, again, I'll repeat, self-realization, knowledge, and independence. Those 3 things equal to an environment that is sustainable, because then you are able to sustain yourself as a person.
Oh, okay. So now I want to ask you, for example, if a child doesn't know their purpose, are you trying to say to me that they won't be able to sustain themselves? Like, for example, a child doesn't attain self-realization.
Yeah.
Would that child be able to sustain themselves or not?
Well, if in our communities, we're living in communities whereby people find means to sustain, but they're surviving, not sustaining. So self-realization helps you to understand who am I and where am I going, right?
Yeah.
And then once you understand that, you get to know, okay, what's the kind of knowledge that I need to get? When you get that knowledge, you are able to then be independent. When you are independent, you are able to sustain yourself. Sustenance means that I've got enough not to keep me going, but for those who are coming also after me. So we are trying to eliminate the process of trying to survive. We want, so if to answer your question, if you don't have self-realization to know who you are and where you are going, you spend anyhow, you do anyhow. So yes, you will live, you get what I'm saying, but you are surviving, you're not sustaining.
Okay, I have an interesting question actually. It's
Alright.
actually funny in a way. So now I have this taxi owner.
Okay.
That taxi owner, first of all, is independent. He's not dependent on anyone for any income.
Okay.
Though yes, the business might be generating an income, this guy says, I have taxis, I own them. Do you understand? And right now will that taxi owner sustaining himself or herself by owning taxis?
I would say they are sustaining
Or surviving.
themselves. I would say they are sustaining themselves. For instance, if they're the ones who are owning, right, the business, so they own it.
Yeah.
So whatever income they getting is them, they're not relying on anybody. So it is a form of sustenance, I would say. What do you think?
Okay, what do I think? I think it's it's both surviving, man, and sustaining.
How?
For me, because listen, first of all, when you own a taxi, as much as you might own it, it's not something that is sustainable. A taxi might have an accident there, and then it's the end.
Okay.
Do you understand? Hence I say it's surviving and also sustaining for that individual.
All right. So it's a bit of both for you.
Yeah.
So how would you say you take that taxi owner, same example, and so you're saying it's surviving and sustaining.
Yeah.
How would you transform that particular business to be one that is sustainable?
To our modern economy, for that business to be sustainable, for example, a taxi business is something that is independent on its own. It's not registered under government. Because most in our society, something that is considered independent or sustainable should be, first of all, registered with government, should be registered with this private business so that it's recognized.
And regulated.
You understand? So now the taxi business is something that is registered with SARS or whatever. Do you understand? It's something that is just independent, that they're doing their own business, they're not being taxed for anything, they're just having a nice life. Do you understand? So, a taxi business is not something that is dependent on anything. It's something that is just independent on its own. It's just their own world. They're living their own world, if I put it like that.
Right.
I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Yes, you did. And then I know that we discussed, our vision and our future is Creative Central, to push this idea of self-sustenance, right? And so can you share a little bit that what is it in future that we want to do to push the idea of independence and self-realization? I mean, sorry, not self-realization, self-sustenance. Because you mentioned that there's a couple of things we want to do, projects, businesses, because we want to practice what we preach, right, to the children.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is it that we want to do? And also we will equip the children to realize that, okay, self-sustenance is something that they should be focusing on, and how are we Creative Central going to sustain ourselves?
Okay. For example, like we designed Creative Central to be a hybrid enterprise, an hybrid social enterprise that is not dependent so much on funders to have life, but it will also generate its own income. For example, so we're going to be doing social work, and also we're going to be doing corporate work. That corporate work will support the social work that we're doing. What we want to do actually to be independent is to own businesses. For example, owning commercial property, owning residential property. That's one of the things that we want to do, so that we're sustaining our social, we are sustaining actually the business.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think we've talked about it is not to rent out houses, because for me that's not sustainability. You understand? Because renting is dependent on the economy, how it's doing. If the economy is not doing well, people will lose their jobs. Now you won't have tenants to rent.
Yeah.
Now what we want to do is to make sure that we buy houses, we fix them if they need to be fixed, we sell them. That is the way of sustaining the entire organization.
And also our community.
Exactly. And another thing that we want to do is, in our program, agriculture. Agriculture for me, it's something that is very close into my heart, and agriculture will never end.
Yeah.
You understand? For you to eat, you need to plow. Agriculture is a need. For you to eat meat, you need agriculture. For you to have wine, you need agriculture. So agriculture is kind of like the basic for everything, and in a way we've taken it for granted.
Yeah.
More especially us as black people. You understand? We grew up plowing, we grew up herding the sheep, etc. But now we've forgotten, we've deserted that life, and we've adopted the modern life that is not sustainable in a way. So what I want us to do is to go back, you understand, to our roots, to our culture, so that we might be able to sustain ourselves.
I want to add something, because we're talking about an ecosystem.
Yeah.
So initially, as we also created Creative Central, we not only had the vision. Well, our target market was based on children, right?
Yeah.
Reason being that we believe that if you start a young age, teach a child at a young age, they will grow up with that.
Yeah.
And so, but our vision also was to see our communities changing, and to see our entire country changing. So if we create an ecosystem, for instance, if I would dive into your point of agriculture, imagine a community whereby there is within each household, there is some form, one way or another, of self-sustenance of agriculture. Because we're just discussing now that, okay, why would somebody want to go to a supermarket to buy vegetables or fruits? Then one point was raised that because it's convenient and don't have time to do it. But then in my mind came, we have in our society or in our economy, we're at a point whereby people say that there's no jobs, right?
True.
But another person was speaking to raise the point that we're coming from a background whereby we're coming from places that we physically plow and do agriculture ourselves, right? Now imagine I am working a full-time job and I don't have time to grow my garden, but there's somebody at home who is not working but has knowledge of growing a garden. Wouldn't you rather, instead of going to the supermarket, employ that person to take care of your garden? Don't you think that is a form of our environments or communities sustaining themselves? Because within the statistics we have of that there's a lot of people who do not have job. One person just got a job by you employing them to be their gardener.
Yeah, that is a brilliant idea, but I have two thoughts actually about that. I would say my answer would be yes and no. I think I would say yes and no. Why? Because now I'll employ someone to do gardening for me. I'll employ someone to do gardening for me, and then what will I do with that vegetable? I'll take them.
Yes.
But no, man, it doesn't work well for me.
How does it not?
No,
work?
it doesn't work well for me. I'd rather do it for myself, because the whole point is to first tackle the individual. Understand?
But I'm coming to you. I'm saying I don't have time to do this gardening. I hear you. You talk about agriculture and stuff. But I don't have time to do it.
We all have time.
But there's somebody.
We make time. That's my opinion. We make time. I've heard people saying I don't have time. We've got 24 hours a day, and you sleep 8 hours. Imagine if you sleep 2 hours and then, like honestly speaking, yes. If you want something to succeed, you'll make it a point.
All right, so let's bring it home, since
Yeah.
in our Creative Central organization. So what would be the definition or the meaning of self-sustenance to a young child?
Would be that's a good question. Would be, first of all, not to be dependent on outside sources to sustain yourself. Now, self-sustenance is, in a way, you have a skill and you use that skill to sustain yourself. For example, it doesn't have to be agriculture. You have a skill to do welding. You have the skill to do hair. You have the skill to do nails. You have a skill to do beauty therapy, etc. That is a skill that you can use to sustain yourself instead of going to a boss and being employed and work for someone. That, I think that's, for me, it's
So you're saying the key to self-sustenance is skill.
yes.
All right. So with that, in Creative Central, we're gonna be teaching skills.
Skill,
to
giving
people
skills.
that will sustain.
Skills and
themselves.
knowledge.
I get you.
You understand?
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on our final podcast. We hope that you enjoyed the entire series. If this is the first time you're coming to watch this last one, please go back to the intro and come back, because there's some valuable information that you're gonna get there. Thank you very much. We are Creative Central, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.